Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we continue the music theory series right here at BusyWorksBeats.com/music theory. Today we're going to go over the four main chord types. Now, chord types, we're not talking about the categories of chords or the very specific chord names. I mean general usage, general purpose. So there are four main purposes for chords. And let's open up our piano roll. So for example, if we were to create D minor, which is DFA, this is called a triad chord, a three-note chord. Tri meaning three, just like Trident gum or Trident the avatar. Okay, so tri means three. Okay, and that's where the word triad came from. So not only can you play simple triads, you can invert notes, and inverting notes means moving them down or up an octave. So you can play a triad in many cool creative ways. It doesn't always have to be a stagnant three notes in a row. It can have different voicing. So when you change the arrangement of the notes, that's called the voicing of your chord. So I'm going to add a different feel to the chords by doing a couple tricks. Octaves, inverting notes. We could even copy this over. It's all the same chord. Now, does that sound pleasing in a row like that? No. But the point is, you can make a triad more complex if you need it. So that's the first chord type. The main purpose of a triad is to keep things simple, keep them guided, and be very minimalistic. Now, the next chord type is more for emotional genres like R&B specifically, uses this a lot. And these are called seventh chords. I think Pharrell said his favorite chord was a major seventh. I could be wrong on that, but he mentioned major sevenths a lot. So for a seventh chord, the reason it's called a seventh chord, I'll give you the short explanation and not go on a long explanation, is because when you make a scale, I'm just going to click in random notes here. So let's say that's the first. This would be a mode in this case, but let's just say this is the scale. Okay, this would be the root note for the scale, or the tonal center, the thing which is constant throughout the notes. That's called the first. This is called a scale degree, your first. Your second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And this is why this is called a seventh chord. It's relating to the scale degree. Okay, so that's where the name comes from. And they give you these emotional sounds. Now, again, you can do really cool stuff with seventh chords, like invert notes, and you have more notes to play with, so you can get a little more creative. You can add octaves. Now this is a very basic sine wave, so it's not the coolest of sounds, but I'm doing this so you can hear the pure tone. So you have a lot more room to play with when it comes to seventh chords. Now ninth chords are really, now again, here are the four types of chords. Again, it's not the chord type like dominant, ninth, 11th, 13th. That's not what I mean by chord types. I mean, what are the four main chord purposes? A triad is to keep things simple. A seventh chord is to give you like a romantic kind of emotion, or a loving kind of emotion, a little bit more than the vanilla triad. Now the ninth chords and 11th chords and 13th chords, those are your lush chords. And these chords give you a lot of variation when it comes to mood generation, because you have so many notes to work with. So again, these correlate to scale degrees. I'm not going to go into long explanation about it, because we have full courses on this at busyworksbeats.com/music theory in a day. But this would be your ninth chord right here, 5 notes. And this would be your 11th chord, and this would be your 13th. Now let me count it out. So what you would do in this case, again, let's just use the mode here, starting at D, Dorian. And what we're doing is, this is saying this is the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, so that makes that the seventh chord. Eighth, ninth, that makes that the ninth chord. 10th, 11th, that makes that an 11th chord. 12th, 13th, and that makes that a 13th chord. Now with 13th chords, usually they don't play them out in a row. They don't play them straight. You have a lot of different voicing styles. So let me give you all the cool voicing styles you could do with something like a 13th chord, which is crazy to think of, but you can do a lot of cool stuff. Now again, this is going to sound crazy in context. Probably should have picked a cooler sound, but let's pull this down a notch. There we go. I mean, you have infinite options. You can pull up the third, you can pull the fifth up. You can do a lot of cool stuff when we talk about chords. We have a whole course on chord changes and chord magic at busyworksbeats.com/chord magic, where you can do cool things like, since you have so many notes, now I'm going way outside of this video, but what you can do is raise up, for example, the third and the fifth to give this like a vibe. Create tension and different things. Or you could, there's different ways you can do it. I'm omitting things because it's a contextual thing. Like you can flatten your fifths and your sevenths if you're going down in your chord progression. Or you could raise your third and your fifth if you're going up. There's a lot of different little things you could do with your chords. And you have a lot more options to flatten notes, to change the voicing, to invert notes, to collapse the chord if you want it. So I'm just giving you a greater context here. This is not necessarily a chord type. This would be a tense chord, if anything. And this is really the fourth type of chord, a transition chord right here. So let me go over the chord types once again. The first chord is the simple chord. It's a triad. Anything that's simple. 3 notes, simple, triad. Okay? That's our simple chord. Now when we get into seventh chords, we're going for more emotion, more like a loving emotion. Now when we get into these complex chords and lush chords like 9ths, 11th chords, 13th chords, and all the variations of those, now we're getting into like the lush field where we get to have creative landscapes within the chord. And fourthly, we have transition chords. Transition chords are great for jazzier stuff. So for example, diminished. I always used to hate diminished, but now I love diminished. It's a love and hate relationship. Literally, I used to hate the diminished chord, but now I love it for transition chords, passing chords, it's also called. So let me add a diminished in here. It just gives you that jazzy turnaround. It almost feels like churchy. So these 2 chords in pink or red, whatever your screen displays, these are the transition chords, the chords that take you from one main chord type to the next main chord type. So if we had to categorize this chord progression, what it's doing is going from the green lush chord, transition chord, lush chord, transition chord. Okay, that's the flow of this sequence. So again, there's 4 main chord types. And the reason I keep it this simple is because you have different purposes in your music, and there's different sections in your music, and you have to understand why you're using a chord. Am I trying to create tension? Am I trying to resolve something? Am I trying to lead up to something? So just a quick example, very simple example, but again, to quickly go over the chord types, in my opinion, again, there's more chord names like 7th chords, dominant chords, dominant 7th chords. There's a bunch of chord types, but I don't want to confuse you with all those names. 6 chords. I don't want to confuse you with all those names and nomenclatures. So I keep it simple with 4 main chord purposes or chord types. One is simple, call it a triad for simplicity, 3-note chords. The next one is a 7th chord. This is used for a little bit more emotion, loving emotion. So those would be your 7th chords. The next category are your lush chords, or your 9th chords, your 11th chords, 13th chords, the chords with a lot of notes in them. And then lastly, you have transition chords. And these are chords used to move into the next chord and create tension. So if you want to learn more about chords specifically, we've updated the Chord Magic course right at busyworksbeats.com/chord magic. I'll leave a link below. You can just click that link below or go to busyworksbeats.com/chord magic. We've also updated melody magic as well if you want to extend this into melody. So go to busyworksbeats.com/melody magic. So thanks for watching today. It's busyworksbeats.com.